Morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We are fast approaching the 1 year anniversary of the coffee shop, which it's been a great year, especially down here. Obviously, domestically with my wife's situation, things have been tough. I'm now going on 2 months having not heard from her. And what can you do, right? Drugs are a powerful thing that really destroy lives. It's not a cliche, and my soul still is aching for her and hope that she can find her way. It's hard to imagine me and her reconciling at this point with all the damage that's been done and all the lies that she told. But addiction makes people into a different person, obviously. I wish her the best. My prayers go out to her. Keep her in your thoughts and minds. Keep me in your thoughts and minds. I did collapse last Tuesday, a week ago. Had a real bad dizzy spell, and the ambulance came, and they kind of helped me get my blood pressure meds, which I'd forgotten to take that morning. I had some phone call about someone trying to sue my wife, and I can't get a hold of her, and it just kind of probably put me over the top. And the exhaustion of working these 12, 15-hour days and trying to book and promote these gigs, and it's all been a lot. I saw the doctor yesterday. She upped one of my meds. I got some more blood work coming later this week. But it's been a lot. But we will persevere. And the good news is I'm down to 196 pounds. I've not been under 200 pounds in 30 years. And so it's surprising my blood pressure hasn't gone down more with all the weight loss and the eating healthy and the low sodium and all that. But we'll get on top of it. Me and the doctor are figuring it out. I appreciate you, Lisa. I'm debuting a set of my own original material in a week and a half's time on December 1st. Kind of a anniversary night for the cafe, and it's the first time I'll have performed in front of an audience. I've done some open mic stuff here already, but I haven't played with one of my bands or like in a live setting, doing a real set in a long time. So I'm looking forward to it. I do love an audience. I do love being in front of people. And I also enjoy kind of having the opportunity to put context to the lyrics I write. And I'm very much a lyric-driven songwriter. The songs are about a vehicle for what my lyrical expression is, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it, and there's a chance I might try to live stream it. My buddy Mike Parenti suggested that, and I wish I could say, oh yeah, I know exactly how to do that, because I don't, but it can't be that hard, because other guys my age are doing it. I just never have a very comfortable vernacular with technology. We're always a little bit at odds. My old man chin, I'm not thrilled about that. I think some of it's from the weight loss, but it's just starting to look like I'm an older guy, which I guess I am. But so speaking of Mike Parenti, we were talking about the price of some of the records today, in particular Love Supreme and Impulse. And this is where knowing the labels does come in handy to a degree. And obviously knowing this doesn't necessarily change the going rate or what people are asking for a record, but Impulse records should never cost $400, $500, $600. They were too well distributed. Thousands of them are out there and still exist, and they've also been reissued a lot of times, and especially something like Love Supreme. And Impulse wasn't on the scale of a Blue Note or a Prestige or a Riverside or a Savoy, a small little independent label distributing to black neighborhoods on the East Coast and maybe shipping a box or two out to LA and Chicago. That's what those little jazz legendary labels were capable of. That's what they did. 5,000, 10,000 copies was a large edition of one of their pressings. Jimmy Smith record might sell 8,000, 10,000 copies, and those numbers are much harder to find than you think. You think there would be some kind of graph or chart that was showing you what each album and release on Blue Note sold, but I've never come across anything that looks anything like that. I've read that some of the less popular titles sold a couple thousand copies, Babyface Willette kind of stuff, But there's Love Supreme titles out there going for $400. It's like, I mean, there's hundreds of copies out there for sale still. And I don't think you should pay that for an original pressing promo. I just don't. I mean, it's a lot for the prestige of saying, oh, I got the original pressing. And he had found one for just a steal of a deal, and hopefully it shows up. But, I mean, knowing some of these details about these labels, Impulse was launched by ABC, which is affiliated with ABC Paramount. That's as big a company as the record industry saw in 1960. That's a big industry, corporate, West Coast film industry conglomerate. And they put their label out there to distribute film soundtracks, and there's some great titles on the initial ABC Jazz series. And they launched Impulse with the guidance of Creed Taylor as a subsidiary label with the big gatefolds, and the distribution was nationwide. Impulse wasn't just going to a few small boroughs and barrios. This stuff was going across the country, which is why a lot of the titles are kind of more saccharine, a little overproduced at times, accessible. It's why they were trying to pigeonhole Coltrane into more of the my favorite things and doing ballads and working with Johnny Hartman. I mean, they wanted to sell records, obviously, and they were still willing to tackle some pretty difficult material, which is really all Coltrane seemed to have to offer by 1961. But by the launch of Impulse in December of 60 for the holiday season, 4 titles coming out, I mean, this was a well-distributed label. There's still thousands of copies of those records out there. And some records are much tougher to find than others. But, I mean, I remember even like guys like Pharoah Sanders, you would see a lot of pressings of some of those records like Themby, and I remember seeing them in record stores all the time. I'm sure that's changed as more and more have been bought up and as prices have escalated. But it does seem a little crazy, some of the prices that people are fetching or asking for even for some of these titles. I mean, if you get that for the record you're selling, good for you. But I do think what you're making is making a hobby that's supposed to be enjoyable. It's making it a little bit more for an elite, which is sad, because the music should be accessible to everybody. And of course, it is through the reissue programs and streaming and other ways to access the music. But some of these sellers, I think, are a little bit chasing the moon and a little bit caught up in the craze, and sometimes even delusional in the prices that they are asking for some of these titles. An old Hank Mobley Blue Note can go for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 because there's only a few scarce titles of that available, and usually it takes someone dying for that to come available. People don't sell their Hank Mobley Blue Notes. I mean, someone has to pass on, and the wife's like, yeah, I'm going to get rid of my husband's records. And those records had very limited releases. And even though Blue Note does see, United Artists, Liberty, other entities reissuing many other titles through the years, classic records, of course, Tone Poet now, it doesn't mean that those originals are still not of great value, and they are. But to pay something exorbitant for a record that is truly rare is more understandable than to fork out $400 for a record that has 100 different versions available to you right now. And I just think it's a bit of the antithesis of what jazz and collecting music should be about. And sadly for too many people, it becomes about the prestige of having that expensive copy. They want to be able to show their friends and put their monocle in and be like, I paid $500 for this. See how elite I am? And they didn't feed their kids that week. I mean, and obviously some people can afford that kind of stuff, and great. I mean, more power to them. And I guess if you're an audiophile and you have a $10,000 amp and $10,000 speakers and cables that cost more than the average car system, having a nice pressing of something is of value. But it was certainly never the driving force behind whatever I've been about. And it doesn't take a deluxe and an original edition of Tom Sawyer to get the book. The paperback will tell you the story just the same. And the guy with the paperback actually might read it a few more times. He's not worried about bending the jacket. And so enjoying the music, obviously, is always the point of all of this. And not to belabor the point, but there's just too much discussion about the other side of the coin and not the music itself. I'm going to mention real quick what I'm listening to. And I talked about this before, but I listened to it yesterday, and it's just fantastic. Lester Young. It's on the Clef imprint. It's with the great Oscar Peterson trio. Great David Stone Martin cover. Little 10-inch Norgran number 5. Clef and Norgran were little two sister labels that evolve into Verve under Norman Granz's tutelage. Most of you who follow my channel will be all well aware about all that. But, great cover. One of the great innovators on the tenor. Along with Ben Webster, along with Coleman Hawkins. Those three guys are the three main ingredients of any tenor player's gumbo. What's your soup made of? 40% Hawkins, 30% Lester, and then some Ben Webster. And then you sprinkle in some other things. But from Dexter Gordon to Sonny Rollins to John Coltrane, you can't understand those players and understand their lineage and understand their place in jazz canon and history without having some comprehension of Coleman Hawkins, Ben Webster, and Lester Young. Lester's a wonderful player, pork pie hat, playing the horn off to the side. One of the great accompanists, is accompanying Billie Holiday, of course, is just legendary. The great Ray Brown and the great Barney Kessel around this trio with J.C. Hurd on the drums. Peterson's trio has several different morphifications of the lineup. I just made that word up and I actually kind of liked it. But I never really stopped enjoying listening to Lester. And every time I put it on, I'm like, wow, that's just really enjoyable. And Barney Kessel, he's a great player. And of course, he ends up being part of the Wrecking Crew on the West Coast and truly a giant of jazz guitar. His work on contemporary label is accessible, fun to listen to, and everyone will enjoy what Barney Kessel's contemporary output was about, which he has quite a bit of material on contemporary out there in LA. And of course Oscar Peterson often gets demoted to easy listening player, but when you recognize where this guy came from and how he was talked into becoming more a part of the scene because he was insecure being from Montreal and didn't feel like he belonged, and Norman was like, no, you are a virtuoso of the highest regard. And when he started taking the stage with some of these greats, he etched his name in stone. And his early work for Norman, backing most of the great sessions for Norman Granz from 52, 3, 4, 5, 6. That you gotta love Oscar Peterson. And he does do some, those songbook records, which have two iterations, honestly, one on Clef and one on Verve itself. But you just gotta recognize the talent that Oscar Peterson brought to the table. And then when you hear him in the 70s, you really realize how great a player he was. His star was well established, and he ends up living a lot of his life in Toronto, my hometown. And again, I've talked about all those guys before, but speaking of Ray Brown, this got played in the cafe the other day. By the way, my fingernails are black. It's a reminder to take my medication. I don't want to collapse again. And someone said, paint a fingernail. And so I painted one. And I was like, well, that just looks dumb. And so therefore, the Gothic Jazz Shepherd has arisen. But Soul Energy by Ray Brown. This record was elusive for me for a long time. Not because it was hard to find, but because it could become very expensive. A record I used to see in stores, I gotta remember to hold records up a little longer. A record I used to see in stores all the time for $5, $10, $15 has now become a $50, $60, $70 record, often even for Japanese reissues of it. It's gotten really expensive. Gene Harris, of course, to the Three Sounds, is accompanying him on this. The version of Crimea River, just gorgeous. Garrett King on the drums, Red Holloway on the tenor, and Emily Remler on the guitar. Just fantastic. Modern, contemporary, traditional jazz without any of the trappings or stripping down of what a lot of the 80s jazz became, with that easy listening kind of canned elevator. And I think this was actually probably late 70s, if I recall. I think it's pretty early in the Concord discography. But it's a record you can honestly put on and play it side to side to side to side 2-3 times, and there's so much meat, there's so much playing, and Ray Brown's tonality is just so crystalline. It's just absolute perfection. The entire recording is just a really good sounding recording. So for all you audiophile people and collectors of the most desirable pressings and good best sounding audio testing LPs, that's a great record to test your system to. It's just a really well produced session. It's produced a lot later where technology had changed quite a lot. I mean, this Lester sounds great for being 1952 or 3, but that Ray Brown record will really jump out at you. I put this on in the cafe the other day, the Quintet, on the debut label, and it's truly one of the greatest assemblages of talent on one stage ever. And it's a decent recording, not the best recording, but it's a decent recording. But you have Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, who's on and on, off and on again relationship, sparked a lot of intrigue and a lot of fuel for their combined fires. You had Bud Powell on the piano, who was still on top of his game at that point. The decline was starting. The mental health issues and the police violence and the electric shock therapy and some of the awful things about Bud Powell's story. It's really tragic. But Bud's still in fine form. And you have Max Roach and Charlie Mingus on drums and bass. And so what you really have is like just this incredible talent of bebop, post-bebop players playing at Massey Hall in Toronto. Again, a nice Toronto linkage there, illustrating Toronto's connection to jazz. And initially it was on 10 inches, and there's one of the 10 inches for that. But it's a great session. It's a great show by some of the great talent that ever has been assembled. And it's always worth hearing those players and just understanding that history. This is Trigger Alpert's All-Stars. And it's a pretty outstanding group here. Boy, you look at some of this talent that's collected here. And Trigger Alper was a bass player, and not all the names are even listed on the front. It talks about Trigger Happy, Trigger Alpert's Absolutely All-Star 7, and that's with Tony Scott, the great clarinetist who worked with Bill Evans, came from a similar childhood. I think they went to school together actually at college. Marty Peisch, one of the great arrangers of piano players, West Coast kind of sensation. Dick Hyman, the great Zoot Sims on the tenor, beautiful Webster, Lester kind of influence player. Joe Wilder, who I spoke about a lot recently, one of the great trumpet players of that era that's completely unheralded today. The great Al Cohn also was on the tenor. And you added other players too, like Irby Green on the trombone, Ed Shaughnessy on the drums. It's just really a who's who. And it's a Riverside session, original Riverside pressing. There's the old Riverside label. Number 215, 225, or 225. So it's number 25 in the Riverside Modern Jazz sequence. It's an absolutely great record. And it's one you can find for under $20. Because, I mean, the collectors are like, oh, that can't be that good, can it? It's only $20. But it's fantastic. It's really a great session with a lot of great players laced throughout it. A record I've showed you many times before, but Joe Puma, it's just not long enough. That's the only complaint I have about this record. It's with the great Bill Evans, the great Oscar Pettiford, Paul Motion on drums. And so, I mean, what more could you ask for right there? When you have bass players, piano players, and drummers, Evans, Pettiford, and Paul Motion, I mean, forget about it. And Puma just glides and dances and scoots. The jazz guitar, it can really scoot at times, like shimmy about. And it's a fun record. I think on part of the record, it's a trio with Oscar Pettiford and Eddie Costa. And I'm a huge Eddie Costa fan. One of the most recognizable players on the piano with that low middle end rolling thunder. again, a record you can probably find for 20, 30 bucks. And it's absolutely wonderful, beautiful playing by real talented players. It's not going to break the bank. It's on the Jubilee label, number 1070, which is smack dab in the heart of the Jubilee stretch of great material. 56, 57, 58 in there. Great stuff. I can't really listen to that record often enough. And the only complaint I have is how quick those sides go by. It almost feels like it's from a 10-inch, but I don't think it is. This is Eileene Woods. And the cover captures quite well the mood of the album. She's a nice singer. Not a lot of blues in her voice, not a lot of gospel, not a lot of black church. She probably comes more from the stage and the theater, and she's a great songstress. But it's good to hear songs sometimes in different contexts but by different artists. Again, on the Jubilee label, number 1046. And compared to that Ethel Ennis record I talked about last week, this is a very different Caucasian sounding slice of the jazz kingdom. I mean, the house speaks for itself. The staircase is interwar, half a mansion. We might be in the Hamptons. And if that's what the house is telling you with the chandelier, I mean, that chandelier ain't in a black church. That chandelier ain't in Brooklyn, Harlem. That chandelier is posh, darling. Nassau County, we want Suffolk County. We like it out there on the island. Marvelous. But it's actually a good listen. It's dinner party music. It's the music's by Clinton, I think, not Bill Clinton, something Clinton, I think it was Clifton. Bill Clifton. Nice arrangements. Some nice flute at times, other players, which they don't really demarcate who the players are. And last, the record I played in the cafe, and I've talked about probably 25 times, but it's one of the first records I would recommend anybody diving into jazz and wanting to know a record that they will certainly love for the rest of their life. And this is, I just dropped by to say hello, by the great Johnny Harvin, who most of you are well familiar with. I love all his work, his Regent, his Roost. I mean, all of his material at Impulse, ABC, his later stuff on some of those 70s labels that were more, I mean, the small 70s jazz labels of a dying breed. But this record in particular comes on the heels of his work with Coltrane. And they've surely made him look as Caucasian as they possibly could. Illinois Jack Cat appears on this. I think Jim Hall appears on this. The instrumentation, the backing musicianry. There's another horn player that is of note. Hank Jones on the piano, who was under contract with Impulse for a brief while. Kenny Burrell's on this, Milt Hinton, Elvin Jones. I mean, it's seriously as good as vocal jazz can and ever will be. It's a little poppier than the Coltrane session, but there's this times where Illinois Jack Cat puts such a flair, such a comment on the vocal, and it's just what the music's supposed to sound like. A record you should probably pay 40, 50 bucks for, no more, but it's out there, it's worth having, it's a forever record. It's one of those records you will never tire of hearing. Your wife won't leave the room. She won't even think about divorcing you when you play that. And if you're playing Ornette Coleman all day long, she's probably thinking, Tommy down the street, he likes Billy Joel. And I don't love Billy Joel, but I don't like this shit. I mean, it's something I've harped on so many times, but I just wish more people would promote good jazz that's listenable, that people will love. But again, it's all about that. How do people perceive me? I gotta look like I'm the coolest, hippest person on the block. So that wraps up today's episode. Just a short, quick one. I've been working on a lot of my own original material right now. It gives me a little bit less time to dive into records. I still have them on a lot of the time, but not quite the volume that I was when I'm spending a lot of time each day working on my guitar and my keyboarding. But I still feel blessed to be here. I'm gonna get my health under control. Like I said, the weight is as low as it's been in 3 decades. So we're persevering, and y'all be blessed. Y'all have a great Thanksgiving. I appreciate you all. Everyone who's given me little blessings to help me through this financial straits, I want to say thank you again. I'm thankful for all of you, and anybody else who wants to chip in, either through the YouTube super thanks or through PayPal or however you want to donate some funds to help out. It is very much appreciated and very much needed. My wife's departure and disappearance has cost me a lot of money, and she's not paying any of her stuff. And so we're doing what we can do. And I hate to ask for money. It's not what this channel's about. But I do want to keep this cafe going. And the expenses of running a cafe have a lot of secret hidden things. They're trying to jack my business insurance up next year because the building's old and the insurance companies are losing their shirts with climate change. It's just one thing after another. And so the live music that we've been doing has helped offset that and bring some more revenue in, but it's also obviously putting me in 15, 16-hour days at times. I'm doing 10, 12 hours a day minimum. The only day I have short day is Sunday, where I'm still doing 6 hours, and then I have to go shopping for the cafe after that. So it's a pretty full-time, but running a small business is for anybody. That's just the nature of it. Of course, I was supposed to have a partner in this, but may the cosmos be with her. I'm not a religious person, but I'm definitely a spiritual person. And whatever power or whatever entity is out there, and if anything is watching over us, please take care of my wife. Please help guide her back to the shore. She's an amazing person. There's a lot about her that I just miss dearly. And I know that she has the tools to once again get back on top of things and be the successful person that she was for many years. Something broke. And when you help people in social health and mental health issues and the desperation of people on the streets and the poverty and the lack of help that the systems provide. And for my European followers, I want you all to recognize America doesn't cover, protect, and provide for its destitute. And so there's a whole demographic of the lower income strata that is really ignored in this country. And the amount of resources and help that's out there for them is so limited. And the hoops people have to drive through to get that help is often exhausting and takes multiple applications and multiple screenings. And my wife championed these people, often just strangers, for years, and made such an investment in helping the people she didn't know, that the people she did know often suffered. And she made a lot of sacrifice, and for that I admire her and I thank her. And she earned some of this, I don't know even what to call it, but this going off the road into the ditch happens to people. Compassion fatigue, it's called. And keep her in your thoughts and prayers. Keep me in your thoughts and prayers. You all be blessed. Have a great holiday. We'll talk to you all as soon as I can. Like I said, I'm pretty overwhelmed right now with just being busy, but I always look forward to interacting with you guys. And everyone who comments and gives it a thumbs up is much appreciated. I mean, I don't push the channel probably like I should at times. I probably would be growing better if I knew better how to dance with the algorithms and promote the thumbs up and ring the bells and all that stuff that the other YouTubers do. It's just, it's not really my vernacular. My vernacular is to get behind the pulpit and preach about this music. Preach about the importance of it and what it means and how valuable it is and how much it shaped the world we live in and the history that we kind of ignore, but we hear every time we turn the radio on. Jazz, blues, black music is omnipresent in the present. And this music is directly linked to all of it. So again, blessings to everybody. Thank you so much. If you want to help the channel out, Patreon, Facebook, Facebook, PayPal, YouTube, whatever, how you want to do it. It's always appreciated. We do thank you for that. And it does go to helping pay the bills right now and keeping a roof over my head. I've not showcased any new records in a while because I can't afford to buy any. And thankfully I'm at a place where there's not a bunch of things going, fuck, I need that so badly. I kind of got to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of content with what I've accumulated. I mean, there's a few Norgran clef 10 inches I still want to get to finish off that sequence. And as anybody who watches the channel knows, I have the music on the LP's version. But the 10 inches, it's fun to collect complete series. And I'm getting close to that. So again, keep me in your thoughts and prayers. Cheers to everybody. Y'all be blessed, be safe. Eat a lot of turkey, sleep well, put your fat on, and then we'll get back to it. Peace.